Oh, hey, buddy. It's your old pal Scott, and this is Let's Talk Tabletop. I speak to a lot of people that play war games, and specifically Games Workshop products. And over the course of conversations, it often comes up various different ways to circumvent the different paywalls, whether it be, not wanting to pay for the app or not wanting to pay the exorbitant prices or whatever. So, this is some of the things I found, and I'm going to discuss whether or not it's good or not for the hobby. And let's dive into it. So first off, the elephant in the room, the thing that you're all thinking of is the price of the miniatures, right? The miniatures go up and up and up and up. They get constantly increased in their price, and it doesn't always feel like you're getting more benefit for it. It always feels like it's kind of the same thing repackaged and you pay more for it. Well, one way that people are getting around that is obviously 3D printing, right? I almost don't even have to mention that in this video, but 3D printing is a way that people are making miniatures, and a lot of times they're indistinguishable from Games Workshop product. And of course, this is illegal, people. I just want to point that out, but it is indistinguishable from GW product. And once they're painted, you can't even tell. And these people are printing them for pennies per miniature. And that is one way people are getting around it. Another way, people that are especially angry at Games Workshop and don't want to give them any more money ever again, is to just stick to secondhand markets like eBay or different auction sites or buying secondhand, because as long as you're not buying from a distributor of Games Workshop, like a store or an online store, as long as you're not doing that, then Games Workshop is not getting any of the money. And a lot of people are trying to fight back in that way. Now, this is the type of person that really hates Games Workshop and really wants to get back at Games Workshop, I suppose. But oddly enough, they still love the game and still want to play it. It's kind of a weird gray area. Another way people get around this is they just proxy their armies. There's a million different proxies, resin printed or otherwise, proxy armies that you can get for probably half the price of Games Workshop. Like Puppets War, Proxy Wars. There's a lot of different one-page rules. There's a lot of different companies that make what are essentially Warhammer proxies, and they are infinitely cheaper than actual Games Workshop product. And in a lot of ways, they have one-for-one analogs for the different Games Workshop units. So you can do that. You can't forget Mantic games either, because Kings of War and Warpath and all of that, their different sci-fi and fantasy games also are probably 30%, 40% cheaper than Games Workshop. And their plastic's gotten a lot better over the years. Originally, Mantic, 15 years ago, Mantic's plastic was not super great quality. It was kind of soft or whatever. But now all their stuff is, the new stuff they come out's in hard plastic. So that makes a really good proxy as well. Then it comes down to terrain. Terrain on Games Workshop's end has always been exorbitantly priced. I mean, just ridiculous. And there's excellent terrain companies, especially with 3D printing once again. One of my favorites is Panhandle 3D. If you go to panhandle3d.com, they are awesome, and they've got free shipping over $100, and their stuff is awesome. The majority of my convention terrain over the years has been panhandle3d.com. And that's a great guy, Greg is. Also, you've got pre-painted stuff that is, it might be closer to the Games Workshop price, but it's already assembled and painted. There's nothing to do. Like GameMat.eu has a lot of pre-painted stuff, and I mean, if you buy one or two of their sets, you've got a full board of terrain for less than what Games Workshop would price, and you don't have to assemble it or paint it. The point is there's a million ways to cut costs and not buy Games Workshop terrain. Games Workshop terrain, really there's no reason to buy it when there's all of these fantastic options out there at a fraction of the price. I mean, you might buy a building from Games Workshop for $80 and Panhandle has it for $30. Like, it's just, there's no competition there. Finally, we come to the rules. The rules are typically paywalled by your codex or your index or whatever, your cards you have to buy. But there are a million places where you can get the rules for free, like Wahapedia and things like that. New Recruit, or it used to be Battle Scribe. Those types of places, or just scans of the Codex Online. And I'm not necessarily condoning any of this, but this is what I've heard people say, and that's what they do. So you don't have to buy your book necessarily. So when it comes down to it, you could play Warhammer and never give Games Workshop a penny. You could buy secondhand or 3D print your entire army, and you could just get the rules for free. You don't have to give them any money whatsoever. But is that a problem? So obviously they're a company, right? And obviously if they don't make money, they will be bought out or they will close their doors, haha, go out of business. That's not happening. But arguably, if you're not supporting the company, then why are you playing their game? You know, it's like it's kind of funny because if you don't support the company, they can't continue in business theoretically. And if they can't continue in business, you no longer have a game to play that is constantly expanded and developed and all of that, right? You'll have to play some older edition. And then, of course, most people gravitate towards an active and live game, right? So they want to play whatever game is active. That's why so few of you play some sort of defunct game from 20 years ago. Some of you do, but most of you don't. And it's because you want progression and change and all that over time. And it seems to be just, human nature. And if you don't give Games Workshop money, arguably they're going to go out of business and the game dies. But there's another argument to that as well. Number one, the argument against that is that the whales of Games Workshop fanboys will buy whatever Games Workshop makes, and really Games Workshop's not really worried about the fringe people that don't want to spend a whole lot of money. Listen, if you've got one army that you bought 20 years ago, Games Workshop has no interest in you whatsoever. They want new players that are going to buy new armies. They want people that will buy multiple armies. And that's what they want. They need new people coming in. Or at least they need new purchases. So if you've had the same Eldar army for 20 years, sorry, they're really not interested in you. So in that case, they're really worried more about the new players that'll spend a lot of money or the whales that will just drop money on whatever Games Workshop drops. And that is really their prime customer base. So you could argue that if you're not spending money with Games Workshop, there's really no risk of them going out of business, as long as not too many people do this, obviously, because the whales will prop them up like they always do. And that's, it's really impossible to know whether or not that's a reasonable take or not, because it's impossible to know how many whales there are or how many people would actually leave the hobby as far as putting money in it, so then the hobby atrophies. It's really, really hard to say. You do know that there is a chance that it negatively impacts the game and potentially the community. And then there's the other question of, if you really hate Games Workshop that much, why are you still playing their game? Like, and I'm going to sound a bit like a hypocrite because I have also struggled with this issue of sometimes Games Workshop makes me very angry. But ultimately, there's a lot of reasons why someone might stay in the game. Like, namely, their gaming club plays Warhammer. And unless you're going to give up the hobby completely and just no longer wargame or hobby, well, then you kind of have to play the game that the rest of your club is playing, right? You can't just be like, well, I'm going to sit over here and play Bolt Action, and all the other 15 people are playing Warhammer. Like, what do you do, right? You're going to solo game in the club forever? Not to say Bolt Action doesn't have a community, but it might not be your local community. So you're really kind of forced to play with whatever your club is playing with. So different people, essentially, it's a coping mechanism. Everybody spends as much money as they can budget for, or they can afford, and then the rest of it kind of gets pirated, or, they find other ways to get around it. And it's really interesting times we live in. Never before has there been so many ways to just straight up circumvent the paywall for Games Workshop. And it is a moral question, but I don't know that there's any particular right and wrong because it's really up to you. How do you sleep at night? If you think you need to support the game because you want to keep the company afloat and you want to continue playing this for the rest of your life, well, then that's your decision on how much you need to pay, right? If you are homeless living out of your car, well, maybe you need to not pay for Warhammer, you know? Or if you're super, super wealthy and you can just be a whale and just buy every single box and never play it or assemble it, well, then I guess that's fine for you. It really does come down to your personal ethics and your personal economic situation. But what do you think? Do you think it's amoral to circumvent Games Workshop? Do you think that you need to support the game in order to continue playing it forever? Or do you think you're fighting the man and you're an anarchist at heart and you're saying, hey, Games Workshop, up yours, bro? Is that what you're saying? I don't know. I think we all fall somewhere on that spectrum. You tell me if you are an anarchist or you are a shining paragon of what Games Workshop wants us all to be. Anyway, thank you for liking, subscribing, sharing, commenting, and thank you to all my beautiful, sexy, good smelling Patreon patrons for supporting the show. I'll see you guys next week.